The ability to speak with confidence and present for impact is easily the most valuable skill you can have in today's world. When you can share your knowledge, you can facilitate change, and when you can facilitate change, well, you can change the world one conversation at a time. But most people think they can't speak articulately, confidently, or with impact. They get choked up by nerves, they lose their words, or that dreaded imposter syndrome shuts them down. Well, I'm happy to say that speaking is a skill that anyone can learn, yes, even you. And that's exactly what this podcast is all about. My name is Kat Matson, and welcome to Speaking with Confidence. Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. Yes, I am Kat, and it's lovely to have you here. If this is your first ever episode of Speaking with Confidence, welcome. Welcome to this little corner of the auditory universe, yes? Don't quite know how to describe that. It's lovely to have you here, and if you are a regular listener, of course, welcome back. Today's episode is so ridiculously juicy. So ridiculously juicy. I am speaking today with someone who is equally, actually she's probably even more passionate and excited than I am when it comes to empowering public servants. More on that in a second. Before I get into today's conversation, I just wanted to do a shout out and a reminder that one of the ways that you can help me get this podcast into the ears of other people so that they too may have the skills and the confidence to speak with authority, with confidence, with authenticity, and with impact so that they too can make their dent in the universe is by sharing this podcast, leaving a review, rating it, or subscribing. Now, I know it sounds really weird, but the reason why leaving a review, rating, and subscribing helps is because they're little signals to the algorithm that says, this is good listening. So whatever platform you're on, I would just be so forever grateful if you could leave a review, leave a rating, or subscribe. And if you leave a review, I'll do a shout out for you on an upcoming episode. So that's my ask. That is my ask. Today, we're talking with Georgie Smith. Now, I first came across Georgie because she was talking in another Facebook group that we're both members of about her upcoming book. Her upcoming book, and for those who are watching the video, I'm now holding it up. It's called The Formula for Impact. And it's about, well, it's called the Young Public Servant's Guide to Doing Well while doing good. And it's all about supporting public servants. When Georgie and I first met and sat down and had a virtual coffee, we just had so much in common when it came to empowering public servants. And we both recognize that people who are drawn to the public sector are generally highly passionate, highly educated, highly dedicated, and highly determined people navigating a machine like no other. And so Georgie and I, from different directions in different ways, are very supportive of providing public servants with skills to help them make their desired impact in that career. So I had to get her on. I had to get her on and have a chat with her about all of her thoughts about public servants and about how to empower them. And so that is the nature of this conversation. So even if you're not a public servant, listen in, because there is some absolute gold around what it takes on the inside to inform change. So please sit back and enjoy this conversation with Georgie Smith. Georgie, welcome to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. I've got to admit, I'm pretty excited about this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
So I just introduced you to our listeners in my words, but I would love to hear it in your words. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
So, hi, my name's Georgie. And I'm the founder and the head trainer of a company called Upsides Training. I'm the author of what might be my favorite book, if that's not too arrogant to say. But what I really am, I'm a massive advocate for the public sector. I think that public servants are the best people, if I can be so bold, because public servants help everybody else. Since I was a kid, I have wanted to just simply make the world a better place. If that might be a bit corny, but I'm still that corny, and that's what I'm about. And it's why I was a public servant for 20 odd years. It's why now I train the public sector in how to be even more awesome. The Formula for Impact is a guide for young public servants on how to do well while doing good. And that's everything that motivates Upsides. We look at where the blockages to impact are in the public sector context, and then we do stuff to try to intervene, and we give people the tools that they need to be able to kick ass on behalf of all of us.
I
So
freaking
that's
love
why I
that.
do what I do. I love it.
And regular listeners would be starting to get a hint now as to why I'm so excited about this conversation, because everything that you've just said very much is aligned with why I'm such an advocate for the public sector, why I loved working in local government, and my frustration with the perception of public servants. It's unfair.
Yeah.
But more importantly, one of the reasons why I started my business and why I do this podcast is to empower people, many of whom are public servants, to make the impact that they want to make
Yeah.
in the world. And yes, I have a copy of the book too, and I think it's fair. I don't think I don't think there's anything arrogant with saying it's your favorite book. So, what I'm aware that we have listeners who are both in the public sector as well as who are outside.
Mhm.
Tell us what the challenge is with getting stuff done in the public sector. Why is it so hard to be impactful?
The challenge. Okay. So I'm on the. I chuckle. So it's a tiny bit of a big question to lead out with, but no worries, Kat. Look, firstly, because it's bloody enormous. So there are 2 million public sector employees in Australia. That's a hell of a lot of people. The machinery of government, local, state, federal level, there's just an awful lot of it, because government, what it does is it underpins society, right? It is creating the boundaries of the sandbox within which we all live and work and play, right? Everything that matters, it's not drawing too long a bow to say everything that matters is touched by government.
Mm-hmm.
Government exists where there is need, right? So why is it hard? Because you have this unbelievably enormous scope that really, really matters, because there is no such thing as a job in government that's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Even I know that everyone's got an opinion about that, but really, you only ever build a bureaucracy where there's actually a need. Where there's somebody's safety, somebody's, fairness, etc. Like all of these really, really critical things are at threat if we don't intervene. So we intervene with bureaucracy. So you're dealing with stuff that really matters. It's got an unbelievably broad scope. It's heavily contested. Every man and his dog's got a view about what else you could be doing with that money. And then just to, if that's not enough for everyone, every time you put a toe wrong, you will be leapt upon. And so, of course, the starting point for any individual who steps into that is, I have to get this right with bugger all behind me. And if I get it wrong, the minister or the media or my local community will crucify me. But if I do get it wrong as well, then I'm buggering up the future. Like, sure, that's really hard. Yeah. So yeah, that's why it's hard to get things done.
For those who are listening and not watching the video, I'm just sitting here nodding and going, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. And in fact, before hopping on to record, I was talking with one of my local government colleagues who I'm doing some consulting work with, and we were having just that kind of conversation. It's constant, and the pressure to get the job done correctly
Mm-hmm.
is heavy. I'm going
Yeah.
to say it's a heavy pressure.
Yeah. Well, and you know that old expression in anyone who's ever done any kind of construction or whatnot, time, cost, quality, choose two. Government is do it quickly, do it well, and we're not going to give you any money.
It's
The end.
exactly it.
Like time, cost, quality to choose two is all about saying, well, you can only have two out of three of those. Something's got to give, right? And what we ask government to do is say, don't ever get it wrong, and do it with ever reducing budgets, ever reducing support, etc. So that's really setting people up to fail, and a lot of what I do is try to help people not get so tripped up by that.
I think you've just alluded to it, but tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book. And I love that you call it the Young Public Servant's Guide. I wish I had it when I first started in the public sector, and I was not young when I first started. But it's certainly a useful guidebook. Why did you feel the need, and yeah, why was there such a gap? Why didn't
Yeah.
this gap exist before, or why does this
Well,
gap
oh
gap
gosh.
exist?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I had other things that I could have been doing. So if somebody else would have done it, then I wouldn't have had to. But I suspect a lot of people who are listening today have that approach in life a lot of, if somebody else is going to do the thing that needs doing, great, all power to them. And if not, I will, that. And so that was kind of where it came to. I'd been a public servant for a very long time at that point. I'd been doing quite senior work in really, in strategic compliance, basically strategic behavior change, saying how do we think about the whole of a system and poke it to get it to do clever outcomes because the really obvious interventions hadn't worked. And so we would try to get tricksy. Anybody who's ever encountered, say, the idea of behavioral insights, some governments have behavioral insights units, right? I was doing that type of stuff and I loved it. Oh God, it was so much fun. Like it was exactly what anyone who thinks that sitting around on the weekend talking about public service, if that's your idea of a good time, then the kind of work that I was doing is also your idea of a good time, right? And what I found was that, there are some really leading voices in the space, senior academics. I'm not going to name any names because the next thing I say will tell you why. When I got to COVID times, I found myself not working for a period of time. And I sat down and thought, I'm going to finally read all of the leading lights. And guess what? Even when I had no job and couldn't go anywhere and was bored stupid, I still couldn't read the damn stuff. And I've got a master's degree and I'd been doing it for years. And I still struggled to read some of the leading thinkers. And I thought, if you're young, if you're coming into government, you don't have necessarily a great mentor around you. And what you can turn to is dry as week old toast and thick as mud. How the hell are you going to make your way? How do you get infected with the bug of understanding why this is such fun? And so I sat down and I wrote a book about everything I wish I had been told when I started. All the stuff I had to work out the hard way. Yeah, that's what it's designed to be. And it's written in a way that is easy to read. It's like having a conversation. And it's everything that I wish that I could have found for me or my staff and couldn't. I had to go do it myself.
That is very cool. I think what you've touched on here, and it's a nice segue into my next question, is bureaucracies in the public service. The information can be very dry, it can be very formal, it can be very bureaucratic, and there's reasons for that. There's, I'm not going to diss that. But when it comes to influencing, and this is for everyone now, whether you're inside the public sector or you're outside trying to influence, when it comes to influence, influence doesn't come through that stale, dry, academic
Yes.
conversation. So why is it important for public sector people first on the inside? Why is it important for them to be able to speak with confidence and influence on the inside?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. So, like I said at the beginning, what we do in government is, by definition, it's city shaping, it's state shaping, it's country shaping, right? Whichever level you're working at, that's what you're doing. As a result, whoever's on the other end of that influencing conversation you're trying to have. You know, let's say you're trying to get your exec or your DepSec or whatever to make a decision that, you know, let's say it brings in a new piece of policy. They are going to be coming from a place of, oh my God, if I get this wrong, then, right? And so actually, if you just go in with dry and boring, then unless you're proposing something that's really super safe and blindingly obvious and that has no interest from any outside stakeholders whatsoever, then you're going to actually have to get over some fear on the other side. You know, if you're trying to propose something that's maybe a bit contentious, or that, you know, that there isn't already a burning platform for, then you got to go in with more than the numbers. You know, there's a wonderful line. I'm guessing a few listeners here might be familiar with the cartoon Bluey, right? I have a 5-year-old, so my entire life is framed by Bluey. And there's this wonderful line where Bluey's got the irrits and she goes and complains to her mum. And her mum says, well, Bluey, do you want to be right or do you want your sister to play with you? And so much of what we do in government is delivered by experts, you know, because you don't go and get a job inside, I don't know, the Department of Transport or the EPA or whatever if you're not an expert in something. And they're delivered by people who are usually, you know, you spend all your time thinking about it. You're used to being kind of right and you want people to listen to you. But actually, when it comes to getting people across over the line, that's not how we get the most influence. We get the most influence by first listening to the other side, understanding where they're coming from, and then giving them something that they want to get behind. You know, and you being right is so rarely it. You've got to really try to paint a picture for them about here's how this is going to make your life better. Here's how this is awesome. And to my mind, you know, I've always taken the approach of I infuse all of that with storytelling. Every ministerial I've ever written, every, you know, like project plan or program plan, there's always story. There's always something human in it to get people excited. They should be excited. This is important stuff.
I'm laughing because I was just talking about that earlier today when I was recounting my stories of, you know, despite being an excellent communicator, I was wondering why is my CEO just keep sending me back to write another briefing note? What am I missing? And it was because I wasn't addressing their fears, their concerns, but it's also the importance of the stories, making it really human, because when you do that, whoever you're talking to can then use those same stories to influence who they need to talk to. Like it's micro influence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you do need, I mean, you know, I'm not saying don't come in with your stats, you know, but any form of statistic, any form of analysis, it's the data, it's the beginning of your story. It's not the story in and of itself. You know, there's about 1% of the population that's going to be convinced by a spreadsheet. But the stories that you can pull out of that and the way that you can say, here's what this means to the world, to our patch of the world. Here's why this matters. And as you say, Kat, here's why this will matter to all of the people that you need to convince, minister or whatever, is massive. Giving them the ammo that they need. It's just about removing friction, isn't it?
It's exactly about removing friction. That is gold. One of the other things that I think people I'm going to say misunderstand, is how long it takes to influence conversations, decisions and whatnot, and why it takes so long. So can you talk to the why it takes so long first, and then your guidance for public sector people as to how, I call it micro influence. How do you have those micro conversations over time and trust that, yeah, this might take 5 years?
Absolutely.
Or longer.
And we did not arrange this question beforehand, but man, if I was going to plant a Dorothy Dixer with you, that might be it. So thanks. So why does it take so long? Because, you know, see previous comment about government is all over the stuff that matters the most, right? And so there is not a single pocket of what government works on that doesn't have 95 bajillion stakeholders, right? And there's all
95 bajillion.
Yeah, that's a stat that you can take to the bank.
Yeah.
So, and there's the people who actually care about the thing today, but then there's all of the other people who might care if you poke it in just the right way or the wrong way. And then there's all of the people who don't even exist yet, but who will care about it in a future sense, because of course enshrined in the Australian legislative landscape is the idea of intergenerational equity, which means we actually have to be thinking about people and about towns and about societies and about plants and animals that don't even exist yet, right? So that's how many stakeholders are involved in every single thing that you touch. So why does it take bloody forever to get change? Well, that's one reason, just because in any change process, bringing people along on the journey is part of it. And the more people, as they say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Well, if you got to go together, then expect it to take a while. Another reason, though, and I talk about this in the book, is government is the 800-pound gorilla, right? If we make sweeping changes quickly, then that buggers up society. So I'm going to give an example of that, but it's not a political example. It might sound like it, but it's not. When I was at the Clean Energy Council, we were still recovering as a renewable energy industry from the change in about 2013, 14 or so, when Abbott switched off the carbon tax. Now, I'm not going to argue the pros and cons of that policy. What I will say is that because it happened quickly, it actually pretty much collapsed that industry. Like, there was this massive contraction in the industry, and so lots of people lost jobs, lots of companies fell over, etc., right? It causes chaos. Now, that could have been any other policy. It doesn't, that was just a particular example because I happened to live through the aftermath. But anytime government makes really rapid changes, it's a dirty great thing, and that has a huge amount of influence throughout society, because of course government is that foundation layer. It creates the rules that bind the rest of society, and so you have to move slowly. You have to move very carefully, very cautiously as you tiptoe through we could say tulips, we could say minefield, either would apply. But yeah, these are all the things that are going on. So in terms of the second part of your question, what does that mean then for public policy people, or for anybody who's trying to affect change in government? The first thing is, I had to learn this lesson in my 20s. If you are, wanting to charge at the ramparts right now, you've got a thing and you're like, but we've got to fix the thing right now, this second. Government's probably not the place for you. Just going to put that out there. You probably want to go into an NGO, into a peak body, into some sort of advocacy body where you can stand outside the tent shouting really friggin' loudly and being a bit on the extreme of the situation and demanding change. That's a really important thing to have in a democracy, right? We need the people at the fringes who are going, "Oi, seriously!" and making it a point, right? Dragging things along. If you're okay with a slower pace of things, though, government's a fantastic place to be, because it needs people who can keep their eye on the prize over the long term. So I use a method with some of my clients that I call the third drawer plan. And it recognizes that things have seasons. Ideas have their moments. And one of the things that we do in the third drawer plan, third drawer because there was a Jim Owen skit that talked about, in the kitchen, the third drawer is full of shit. So it's just where you put all of the other stuff, right? So a really good public servant has some third drawer ideas. And what yes, they are I do. For, indeed, right? We also, by the way, a very specific form of a third drawer idea is what I call the Q4 idea, which is fourth quarter. When around about March, you might get an email from finance that says, we're underspent. Has anyone got any, sub 20K things that you can get delivered in about 6 weeks?
Yes,
that we can just throw some money out the door so that we, expend our budget, right? Friggin' fantastic, okay? So you combine these two. Anyway, the point of that is just everything has its season. An idea will not have its time right up until it does have its time. So a good public servant does the background work. You can do a lot there to be influencing, micro-influencing, as you're saying, building up the case for change, but also just doing whatever the other background work is, the analysis or the, getting the house in order so that then when the friggin' minister's advisor calls you at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday and says, we're making an announcement tomorrow, can you write the briefing? that you've been shouting about for 2.5 years, not talking from personal experience at all.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that either.
I'm also not familiar with literally doing it on my 9-year-old niece's iPad while 3 months pregnant at a like jungle play center, because that was all I had on me at the time, and then dialing it down the phone to my deputy to dictate the briefing. That didn't happen. That's how you get prepared. That's how you build up for changes that then happen in an instant. And you're like, where the hell did that come from? Well, it's been brewing for 5 years. Yeah. So you got to be able to live with that if you're going to come into Gov, especially into policy.
I want to very much overtly call out this piece because particularly that part of, where did that just come from? Well, it's actually been brewing for 5 years. I tell the stories a lot with my clients and students that part of speaking with influence and speaking with impact is understanding that it can be a very long journey sometimes. And by consistently, repeatedly laying the foundations, planting those seeds, people in the end don't know where the idea came from. They just know that it's there, and then all of a sudden it happens. And that's powerful. That is really, really powerful.
And one of the expressions that I use a lot is that success has many parents, failure is an orphan. And another one that goes along with it is you can do anything if you don't care who gets the credit. Mm-hmm. So, in the public sector, I find I use these in the book actually, and I've built up a lot of these little axioms over the years. So I actually start my chapters with a collection of them. Because a good quote sometimes, it's just a lot easier to remember that than remember the big concept behind it. The number of times that I have planted seed after seed after seed after seed, and each of those seeds looks different, right? Because I'm always after the same goal. Mm-hmm. But, well, the seed that I plant with this person is a bit different to the seed with that person, because they're always speaking into, well, what do they care about? And what do the people that they care about? And how do I just keep on tweaking things and building it up, and then always, always, always being on the lookout for what's on fire today? And how do I take today's crisis and just thread that in, tie a little knot onto it around the thing that I'm trying to get movement on, and say, actually, this little third drawer plan that I have here is a solution to that. And then you can try that on and try that. It is it's kind of simple in a lot of ways, but it is also sophisticated. It's simultaneously easy and difficult, which I think there is a real art to this, but it is an art, as they say, well worth your learning. And it is learnable. It is teachable, thankfully, because that's what I do now, but it is learnable.
Yeah, and it's also, once you understand it, and you've articulated it so beautifully, once you understand it, it's actually quite straightforward. You just need to be present all of the time. Like it does require, rather than getting frustrated that people aren't hearing your message, it's instead connecting with, well, what do they need out of my message? What does this person need? Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
And can I just say, on the subject of being present all the time, geez, that's tough. And I want to just acknowledge to listeners that, like, that's really hard to do. A huge amount of what I do, in fact, I just an hour ago was delivering a webinar that was talking about a model of mine called the Quick Unsticker. And it's designed to help people essentially get out of whatever their brain is stuck on, so that they can go back to being a clearinghouse for whatever else is going on for other people, so that you can then say, well, okay, what is it that you need? I want you to do this thing for me. What do you need here? What's in the way of that for you? Every objection that you get, so often we treat those as like insults or blockers or problems. They're not. They're gifts. They're insight. Every objection is somebody's values being played back at you in some way. And if you can learn to hear that, which you can absolutely learn. I speak from experience. I used to be crap at this. I've always been great at telling people what I think. But it took me a long time to go from being really loud to being able to shut up and listen. And the second that I worked out how to do that, my ability to influence went through the roof.
Tell me more about that, because I mean, I get that this is a speaking with confidence podcast, but listening to speak with confidence is also powerful. So tell me a little bit more about that listening piece.
Look, I would break it down into two things. And in fact, this is now what I look for when I'm hiring, which I've done a lot of hiring over the years in lots of different ways. I look for two things, and they are humility and curiosity. And if you can cultivate your humility and curiosity, and let me unpack those a little bit. If you can cultivate them, it opens up an entirely new world because you stop being the center of it. So humility is simply the acknowledgement to yourself that you don't know everything about whatever the situation is. You know, if you think, mate, I've got this under control. Like I'm the expert. I know what's what. I know exactly what needs to happen here. And if everybody would just shut up and listen to me, then this would all be fine, right? Like we've all, I'm certainly, definitely, yeah, hands up. So if we can step out of that and go, actually, there could be something here for me to learn. You know, even if it's just, why is this person being an obstreperous nitwit? Let's find out. You know, Abraham Lincoln said, I don't like that man. I need to get to know him better. I only came across that about 2 weeks ago, and it has blown my mind,
Yeah, that's a
right?
good one.
Making me a better human. So there's another one I'm going to add into book 2. So that's humility. Curiosity. So if humility is, there is something here that I don't know. Curiosity says, and I want to know it. Because you can, I've seen this, you know, go, there's something here that I don't know, but I don't care to know it. I've encountered those people. They can be painful. They're happy in their ignorance, right? That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for that second component as well, which is curiosity, which is tell me, please help me understand. Help me see. Gosh, it's the power of, can you help me understand that? As a question is like for not only for actually doing what it says on the tin, helping me understand that, but also for building relationships. I build more relationships by asking for information than I have ever built by giving it.
Totally. Georgie, we could honestly spend hours, but I'm not sure that our listeners would appreciate that. So I will start to wrap this up. I do ask all of my guests for their top speaking tip. You've already given us a heap. Before you do that, though, I would love for you to let our listeners know, where can people find you? Where can they find the book? Where can they find information about your training? Where can people find info?
Easiest place is upsides.com.au. That's UPSIDES, because there are always upsides to every situation. Upsides.com.au is where you will find me, information about what I do. You can also buy the book there, or just come find me on LinkedIn as well. Like, I absolutely love having chats with people on LinkedIn. People slide into my DMs all the time, and we have nice big chats about all sorts of things. Meeting a public servant is my idea of a good time, so hit me up, everyone. In terms of the biggest piece of advice that I've got for speaking with confidence is for public servants, deeply bloody believe in what you do. Like, believe in it out loud. Think that you are the duck's nuts because you are. Like, so much of what I deal with day to day now that I'm helping public servants is, to be honest, it's manifestations of the trauma of being judged, being looked down on, being overlooked, being talked down to, all of that, right? In fact, pretty soon is going to get published my TED Talk on the subject. So I look forward to that. That's hopefully going to get published in the next few weeks. And so much of that shielding that we do, we take on because we are used to being told no. We're used to being told that we're crap, frankly. All of that, it grinds down public servants over time. If you don't counteract that, if you don't periodically check back in with yourself, remind yourself, why am I doing this? Why does this matter? Because it 100% does. Why does this align with my values, my purpose on this planet? check back in with that constantly to refill your own cup, to remind yourself, hey, actually, I can stand here and with a straight face say to the community, to my boss, to whoever needs to hear it, this matters. This thing that I am doing, that I'm talking to you about, it is important. If you come from that place, they're more likely to listen to you. They're more likely to take you seriously. They're more likely to answer you honestly when you then ask, I don't understand. Help me understand why your concern is your concern. Help me understand what's wrong about what I'm proposing. Yeah, you can come from that humility so much more when you genuinely believe in what you do as a large goal rather than just, I got to do this one thing this one time. Yeah.
Yep. Oh my goodness. I love that. Mic drop. Mic drop. There's nothing else to be said. Georgie, thank you so much for coming on today and helping both our public sector audience, but also I'm quite confident that you've helped our non-public sector audience really understand what it's like to be on the inside. So thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thanks, Kat.
How good was that? You can see why I had to get her on, right? You can see why I so desperately wanted to have that conversation. Regular listeners would be very familiar with that concept of influencing through micro conversations over time, and I loved that part of the conversation with Georgie. The other piece that I really want to call out is her closing comments about her biggest speaking tip, and that is around having confidence in what you bring to the conversation. Now, I talk a lot about the Earn the Right framework and collecting your brag bag stories so you always know who you are, why you do what you do, and you've got evidence in the form of stories that have come from your past to demonstrate to yourself as well as to your audience why you're damn good at what you do. And I just loved Georgie's firm and impassioned plea to public servants in particular to sit with pride about what they do for community. If you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, if that whole conversation had you go, oh, that's me, please head over to the Speaking with Confidence group on Facebook. That's Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson over on Facebook. Introduce yourself and ask a question or share your experience. I find myself, because of my experience, working pretty much 50-50 with business owners and with public servants. And public servants have a unique set of complex circumstances that they're navigating when it comes to speaking. So come on in and ask the questions. The other thing is, if you haven't already got a copy of my ebook, How to Stop Rambling, then you want to do that by heading over to impactfulpresenters.com. That's impactfulpresenters.com, and download your free copy of the ebook, How to Stop Rambling. I really look forward to seeing you in the Speaking with Confidence Facebook group. I would love to continue this particular conversation. And until then, here's to confidence, here's to impact. I'll see you next time.